Shadowverse Worlds Beyond is a sequel to Shadowverse, a digital card game that came out in 2016. It's not just an update, it's a brand new game with a brand new client. But was it necessary for the developers to essentially reboot their long-running, storied card game? Or is this an Overwatch 2 situation where this could have just been a content update? It's a fair question, so let's talk about it. I'll be dividing this video into 3 main points, and I'll address the most important point first. The mechanics. Are the mechanics of Worlds Beyond meaningfully different enough to the original game to justify a clean slate? I think so, because in Worlds Beyond, the most base level mechanics that define the entire identity of Shadowverse have either been changed or added to. Let me explain. Firstly, the mulligan. A mulligan in a card game is a phase before the match starts where you decide to keep or change your opening hand. In OG Shadowverse, both players get to redraw a hand of 3. The player going first draws 1 card on their first turn, and the player going second draws 2 cards on their first turn. In Worlds Beyond, both players now mulligan a hand of 4, then both draw 1 on their first turn. It's been standardized, likely to make the game easier to understand and explain. This might sound like a minor change, but any veteran card game player can tell you just how big a deal this is. An additional card that you can redraw lets you curate your opener way better, especially important in combo decks, but this is good for every deck, and there's no longer a benefit in terms of hand advantage in going second. Speaking of the first-second dichotomy, it's a common problem in many card games where the player that goes first is often in an inherently stronger position because they get to dictate what happens in the game first. Worlds Beyond adds a completely new catch-up mechanic for the player going second to help bridge this divide, especially necessary after taking one away in terms of the hand advantage. This mechanic is the extra play point. If you lose the coin flip and go second, you now have the ability to give yourself an extra play point twice during the game. Once during turns 1 to 5 to help smooth out your early game curve, and once turn 6 and onwards to help you cheat out bigger threats earlier. This is a massive boon to the second player, which always struggled in OG Shadowverse without the help of cards printed specifically to help them out, like Ramiel or Angel's Blessing. With this new inherent system to help the player going second catch up, this kind of unintuitive card design is less necessary. Another big change is the merging of 2 classes, Shadowcraft and Bloodcraft, into one class, Abysscraft. Since aesthetically, they're quite similar. Bloodcraft is like spooky vampires and Shadowcraft is like spooky skeletons, and they've done this merger to good success in the physical TCG sister game of Shadowverse, Shadowverse Evolve. This would be a logistical and balancing nightmare to implement as a patch to the OG game, as it would mean Abysscraft has twice the number of cards as every other class, and innumerable new unintended interactions and synergies that it wasn't designed to have as well, which would break the balance of the entire game. There are changes in Worlds Beyond that I believe could have just been a patch to OG Shadowverse. The new keywords Intimidate and Aura would have been easy to work in. Many cards in the base game already have this effect, just not as a keyword. And the new ability to engage amulet cards while they're on the field could also have just been a patch in my opinion. Leader effects had no limit in OG, while they're renamed as crests in Worlds Beyond, and each player can only have 5 at a time. This maybe could have just been a patch as well, but all of that does not compare to the biggest reason the game had to reboot: the changes to the evolution system. The system that defines Shadowverse's entire identity. In Worlds Beyond, the second player still unlocks the ability to evolve their cards 1 turn earlier, on turn 4, than the first player does, on turn 5. Just like the original. However, other than that, the entire evolution mechanic has been essentially overhauled. Now, every evolution will always give a follower +2/+2 in stats, rather than the stat change being different for each individual card. This is much more easy to understand, although it does limit a bit of design and balancing space that was previously available. Not only that, but they've introduced a completely new addition to the evolution system in Worlds Beyond: Super Evolution. This unlocks turn 6 for the second player and turn 7 for the first player. When you super evolve a follower, it gains +3/+3 instead, and becomes undamageable and indestructible during your turns. And when it destroys an enemy follower, it deals 1 point of follow-through damage to the enemy leader. Plus, there are also cards now that specifically need to super evolve to activate certain effects. Finally, both players now have the same amount of evolution points and super evolution points, 2 each, whereas in OG Shadowverse, the second player got 3 evolution points against the first player's 2. Card game balance is a very tricky thing. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of variables that determine whether a card is good or bad, whether one class is better or worse than another. And in a perfect world, the developers consider all these factors when designing the cards for their intended goals. Shadowverse Worlds Beyond changes enough systems that if it were instead a patch to the original game, the balance of every single existing card would be thrown completely out of whack, especially in regards to the new evolution system and the extra play point system. Every single existing OG Shadowverse card was designed with the individual evolve stats in mind, as well as when in the game the card could possibly come out. Because these factors are now different, absolutely nothing from OG would be compatible with the new systems while having the same intended balance. Before I get into the other 2 points about why Worlds Beyond was a necessary reboot for Shadowverse, I'd like to ask you to subscribe. This year is going to be massive for this channel since Worlds Beyond is coming out soon, and you don't want to miss the content that I got cooking. Even if you think that you're subscribed, you might not be due to YouTube shenanigans, so I'd really appreciate it if you could double check. Next point, the engine. Shadowverse OG is coming up on 9 years old now, and frankly, it's showing its age. The visuals and UI are dated, yes, but that could have just been a patch. What can't be so easily fixed is the years of built-up technical debt buried under so many layers of added systems over the years that actually make the game hard to maintain. What do I mean by this? Well, a lot of the systems that currently exist in Shadowverse were not there at launch, and some of them are extremely unintuitive and feel tacked on. When the game first launched, the player going second didn't even draw 2 cards on their first turn. That was added after, and that's why it feels so weird compared to the more logical new way it's done in Worlds Beyond. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The stack system that fixed the entire Earthright archetype was added in Dawn of Calamity, the 22nd card set. The Battle Pass, which is a major part of the game's economy and how players earn resources to progress their account, also added deep into the game's lifespan. Pack points that let you claim any card when you open enough packs of a set, leader effects, leader cards, the match history log, the list goes on. And don't get me started on the temporary gem system, which makes no sense to the average player and is the cause of the biggest number of confused Reddit threads because the temporary cards you unlock with temporary gems are not temporary. Why? But it's fine, right? It's good that the game improves over time, even if it's done a little clunky. Yeah, that's true, but underneath all these patchwork improvements is still the same framework from 9 years ago. And trying to make any changes without collapsing the entire Jenga tower is, I assume, a massive headache for the developers. Why do I assume this? Every few weeks, Shadowverse releases a list of known bugs, and there's a bug that's been listed on this series of articles for years. It reads as follows. When you play a card that returns a follower to your hand right after you play another follower, and the second card moves to the upper left corner of the screen, the game freezes and you are unable to continue the match. The only way to resolve this issue is to close the game entirely and try to reconnect before you lose to the timer. Every time, other bugs would get squashed, new bugs would be discovered, but this bug would always be there. I think it's legitimately unfixable, at least without breaking the game by accident entirely. Now, Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, I believe, still uses the Unity engine, same as the OG, but the Unity engine has developed a lot and released many new versions over the past 9 years. And the Shadowverse dev team, too, has learned an incredible amount over the course of the past decade in terms of what features players want in a digital card game. I personally have already played the demo for Worlds Beyond in person, and I can attest that the game feels silky smooth, looks incredible, and is hopefully a lot more solidly constructed at its foundations out the gate. And the final reason why Worlds Beyond was necessary is the player base. The landscape for digital card games has changed massively. Back when Shadowverse came out, it was chasing the coattails of Hearthstone. While this could be seen as a good thing since Hearthstone undoubtedly exploded the popularity of digital card gaming and let Shadowverse build an audience off of the back of that, it was a double-edged sword since this game that I think is super unique and fun got widely ridiculed as anime Hearthstone or Weebstone. While some stigma still exists, anime is way more mainstream these days. I mean, even Magic the Gathering is embracing Japanese collabs now with Final Fantasy and Hatsune Miku. I think the stigma surrounding the art style of the game is going to be less of a hindrance on the game's momentum now. Another factor is the lower amount of competition for digital card games. Back when Shadowverse OG launched, it felt like everyone and their dad had their own card game. You got Duelists, Gwent, Faeria, Eternal, Elder Scrolls Legends, Fable Fortune, Legends of Runeterra. Does anybody even remember half of these? Now, there are way more physical TCGs around because of the post-pandemic boom, while the number of digital card games has massively decreased. There is still stiff competition, but it's basically just MTGA, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, PTCGL, PTCG Pocket, Marvel Snap, and Hearthstone, actually. Gotta give props to Hearthstone for lasting this long, not gonna lie, but I digress. The point is, the field is basically open for a brand new disruptor in the space with all the bells and whistles that players want. Speaking of momentum, a new release is a brand new opportunity to build an entirely new snowball rolling down a hill, rather than struggling to push along an old, crusty one. Shadowverse OG unfortunately lost a lot of players over the years, especially during the disastrous Wonderland Dreams meta. And while it of course gained new players after that as well, bad word of mouth during that time and the loss of momentum from mistakes made very early during the lifespan of an inexperienced team for sure kneecapped the game's growth. Not only that, but a 9-year-long history is very intimidating for new players to probe into, and a fresh start can capitalize on that post-pandemic boom I was talking about of physical TCGs to get brand new players into digital card games. Finally, there's the potential for brand synergy across the Shadowverse IP. Cardfight Vanguard does this incredibly well, with a great anime that draws so many people into playing the game that would have never given it a second look otherwise. Now, Shadowverse did have an anime, it had two, in fact, but the synergy was, not synergizing. A lot of the cards featured in the anime were completely anime exclusive, so people who watched the show and got excited to play Solar Knight Sunlight would install the game and find out that he doesn't exist. Or even if the anime card did exist, it would be completely different effects-wise than what was in the show. This relaunch is an opportunity for all aspects of Shadowverse as an IP to align. Shadowverse Flame, the previous Shadowverse anime, ended just around when the original Shadowverse stopped getting content updates. This could be an indication of a new anime lined up with Worlds Beyond's launch, although this is just speculation. I think the devs are working towards more synergy though, because we can see this in the physical TCG based on the Shadowverse IP that I mentioned before, Shadowverse Evolve. They are synergizing with the launch of Worlds Beyond with new starter deck sets that feature the Worlds Beyond characters. But far beyond that, they're developing an entirely new main set to tie in with Worlds Beyond, using the same card art as Worlds Beyond so that the same characters can appear in both games at the same time. If the devs can get this synergy lined up on these three prongs, Worlds Beyond, Evolve, and the anime, they can strengthen the entire IP on all fronts. So that's why I believe Worlds Beyond was necessary. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely enjoy this one, where I show off real footage of my first time ever playing the Worlds Beyond demo.